Hey everyone, this is Blake. Today I'm going to be giving an introduction to counterplans, or CPs. So what exactly is a counterplan? A counterplan is an off-case position that is read by the negative debater. It is a form of not only criticizing the AF and the action that the affirmative is advocating for, but it proposes an alternative action that we should take instead of doing the AF. And because it is a counterplan, it takes the form of a policy action, something that can actually be implemented by some type of governing entity. So there are a couple of parts of a counterplan. All counterplans start with a text. This is basically just a really quick summary of what the plan is advocating for, what is the action that we should be taking. It is very specific in the way that it is worded, and it has to remain pretty concise, but clearly represent the entirety of what the advocacy is. And we're going to talk about this part and all other parts in detail in a minute. So the next two parts, net benefits and competition, can sometimes get switched around in their order, but you'll see both of them in pretty much every counterplan. So the next part that I have listed here is net benefits, and net benefits basically explain what the counterplan does, what this action that we're taking instead of doing the AF does, what it looks like in the real world, and why this is better. Most often, net benefits will include a card called a solvency advocate that is basically a more extensive explanation of what the policy action is, and then a more in-depth explanation of what the results of implementing this policy would look like.
So the last part listed here is the competition. The competition is the part of a counterplan that explains why the advocacy of the counterplan is different from the advocacy of the AF. This basically clarifies for the judge why voting for the neg is different than voting for the AF in this round. So to start talking about these in detail, we're going to look at the counterplan text. So the counterplan text is typically a one-sentence summary of an action. Sometimes they're a little longer. Sometimes you might see them in multiple parts, but generally speaking, a counterplan text is just a brief one-sentence description. So, for instance, you might hear something along the lines of, counterplan text, the United States federal government should outlaw the sale of assault rifles. So what that is a very brief description. You know what the action we're taking is. You understand what that means to outlaw the sale of assault rifles, but it doesn't quite get into all the nitty-gritty of how that's going to happen, the process, or things like that. That's more for the cards and the researchers and the experts to explain later on. So the next point here is that we need to make sure that we're picking the right actor. So in every plan text, we're going to have an actor and an action. The actor is the entity that is actually doing the thing described in the counterplan text. So in the example I gave, I said the United States federal government should outlaw the sale of assault rifles. So what I mean by that is that the United States federal government is going to be the one that's passing legislation that is actually going to make the difference described in the counterplan. Now, the actor is not always the United States federal government. It can vary greatly depending on what the topic is or what the evidence suggests. So, for instance, instead of saying the United States federal government, you could, in the case of an international topic, you could make a case that the United Nations should be the actor, or perhaps a specific country like the People's Republic of China should be the actor. Or even just if it is a domestic topic, you could just say the 50 states should do the action instead of the federal government. So there's a lot of different actors that are potentially out there, so make sure that you do your research and understand what it is and use the correct one for whatever action you are advocating for in the counterplan. Also, with counterplans, you want to make sure that you proofread it really thoroughly. So the counterplan text and plan text are always something that you want to workshop extensively because they need to be so clear and concise, but also thorough enough to fully have an understanding of what we're talking about. So you want to make sure that it is clear, and you want to make sure that the grammar is strong, because a grammatically confusing plan text is likely not going to be very effective if put into action. So if you have basic grammatical errors or lack of clarity in your counterplan text, you're opening yourself up to a lot of criticism and confusing a lot of what you're advocating for. The last bullet point here is to make sure that you're using actionable language. Some people, when they're trying to write counterplan text, they'll say, they'll copy terms that you might see in a resolution, like ought or have an obligation to. So while these terms are fine when we're laying the ground for debate for like the resolution that everybody is debating, when we're talking about specific actions that should be taken, really we should use active language like the United States federal government will do this. So in the example I gave, I used the term should. Should is an okay one. It's a term that you will hear in plenty of counterplan text. It's better than ought because it suggests a bit more direct action as opposed to an abstract obligation. But still, if I were to be workshopping that counterplan text example I gave, I might change that word should to something a little bit more active to make sure that it's clear that I'm saying it's an actual action that should be taken and not just a random obligation that exists that we may or may not act on. So now to talk about net benefits. Net benefits are basically like really quick contentions. And what I mean by that is that in the affirmative case, we affirm the resolution and then we give contentions that are independent reasons why affirming the resolution is a good thing. The net benefits on a counterplan are just independent reasons why doing the counterplan is a good thing. So whereas contentions on the AF would be multiple cards to really thoroughly make a point, typically with net benefits it's only 1 to 2 cards per benefit. You're not necessarily going to be listing multiple every time, but in some occasions you will. And it's just important that you really keep these as concise but persuasive as possible. Basically, the role of the net benefits is to explain what the plan does and why those things that it does are better than what the affirmative does. So the name net benefits comes from the fact that when we weigh the benefits versus the cost of the AF against the benefits and cost of the negative, that there needs to be a net result that is beneficial in the world of the counterplan. So the net benefits should really take into account the comparative role that they play in framing the debate between the affirmative and negative actions. So another important thing to consider that I mentioned earlier is that a lot of times net benefits will include something called the solvency advocate. Typically, this is the card that immediately follows the plan text, the counterplan text, and it's just an expert that is giving a full, in-depth explanation of what the policy would look like in action. So it might not necessarily make net benefit claims, it might not be focused on solvency so much as it is just descriptive, but make sure that you always have somebody that is an expert that is doing exactly what you're advocating for in the counterplan, because with counterplans we should be advocating for things that experts say, not just what we as students think might be a good thing to do. It's good to have that expert word backing you. So the last part of a counterplan we're going to talk about is the competition. The competition is basically explaining the difference between the affirmative and the counterplan and why they can't coexist in the same world. We've made some videos on responding to counterplans and Ks and advocacies and things like that and rebuttals. And if you've seen those or if you've been in some progressive rounds before, you're familiar with the term perm, which is an abbreviation for permutation, which is basically an argument that the affirmative debater can make that says that we should do the AF and the negative advocacy at the same time. So the competition is basically a preempt to that argument, explaining why we can't do them both at the same time. So competition can be either analytic or evidence-based depending on how clear it is the affirmative and counterplan are different. So for instance, if the AF is saying that we should reform prisons and the counterplan is saying that we should ban prisons, it's pretty clear that we can't reform and ban the same institution, so we can just throw some analytics in there, a really quick explanation that just says you can't reform and ban the same institution, those actions are contradictory, and we don't necessarily need evidence to back that up. But if it's something that is a little bit more of a gray area, it's always better to have some evidence to make it a bit more persuasive that explains why these policies can't coexist. So competition is sometimes a little hard to think of, you're not quite sure what to research for or how to explain it in simple language. And for every counterplan and AF pairing, this is different, but I would suggest the best general advice I can give is that just imagine what a world would look like where both policies are true, and imagine what that would look like administratively, funding-wise, in terms of organization. Think about how the solvency and interaction of these two plans would change the world, and think about how they would be more effective if one of those plans were to be removed, and that'll kind of give you an idea of why it's a bad idea to do both at the same time. And then when you put that into your own words, that's what competition is. So we're going to talk a bit about different types of counterplans. This is by no means an exhaustive list. Counterplans are always evolving, just like everything else in debate. So there's a lot of different terms that can be used to describe things that take the form of a counterplan. It's important to know these because you might go about addressing them or answering them in different ways, and nobody is going to get up and say that I'm now going to read a plan-inclusive counterplan. So typically you're going to have to figure out for yourself that that's what's going on, so that way you can address it correctly. So it's worth your time to think about these different types of counterplans and what they look like. So the first one I have listed here is what I'm just calling a typical counterplan. It's what people mean when they just say counterplan in a general sense. It is just saying the AF is trying to solve something. We recognize that that thing is a problem, but we're going to solve it in a different way. So for instance, if the AF is trying to improve the environment, we're going to say we agree that the environment needs help, but the way that the AF is going about it is wrong. We're going to propose a different way to help the environment. So the next thing here is a plan-inclusive counterplan, abbreviated to PICS. So the plan-inclusive counterplan agrees with some of the AF, but with certain key distinctions. It's typically like they agree that like 80% of the AF is doing the right thing, but about 20% of it is off, but that 20% is significant enough to alter the world of the policy option. So I have just two quick examples of what PICS might look like. There's tons and tons of different types of PICS, but these are just helpful for understanding what exactly that means by agreeing with distinctions. So the actor PIC, if you remember, we said actors are the entity in the plan text that is implementing the action. So an actor PIC says the action that the AF is advocating for is good. That's the 80% agreeing. But maybe a different actor should do it. That's the 20% difference. So for instance, the affirmative might say the United States federal government should implement some action, and an actor PIC would say that action is good, but the 50 states should implement them at the state level. The delay PIC is a PIC that says that the action of the AF is correct, and the actor is correct as well. That's the 80% agree, but the 20% disagree is when we should do it. It's saying that we shouldn't do it right now for whatever reason, most often related to politics or technology or something along those lines, but instead we should pass it at a certain time period in the future. So the part where we're disagreeing with the AF is about when it is implemented, but we're agreeing with everything else. So the last general type of counterplan we'll talk about here is an advantage counterplan. It basically is saying that there's a specific part of the AF that needs to be solved in a different way, and it gets its name from the fact that a lot of AFs will frame contentions or individual areas of focus as advantages instead, and the counterplan is just made to solve one of those advantages, not the entirety of the AF. So if the AF is about cap and trade systems to mitigate pollutions, they might have one contention that's about the environment, another contention that's about the economy, another contention about international relations, all these different reasons why cap and trade is good. But then an advantage counterplan might say that, okay, I'm going to focus on that environment one, and I'm going to say Counterplan Text, the United States federal government should fund nanotechnology to decrease the effects of emissions. So basically this is something that is totally separate from the cap and trade topic. It's only really tangentially related to the AF because of the area of focus they picked for the contention. The advocacy itself is kind of coming out of left field, but it is a way to solve the AF, the same issues that the AF is concerned about, because it is drawing from that same advantage area. So some strategic considerations for writing and running counterplans. Solvency and net benefits is really, really important with counterplans. That's the part where you win the debate. If you prove that if you read a counterplan text and you prove that the counterplan text is different from the AF with good competition, but you don't have any net benefits, then there's no reason why the counterplan is any better than the AF, so there's no reason why you win the round. So you really need to make sure that your solvency is strong. So the way that you reinforce things like solvency is having multiple net benefits, multiple warrants, and extremely credible authors that are writing things that are based on empirical studies or history or things of that nature. Also, you want to leave room to collapse and be more flexible in counterplan debates during the rebuttals. We made an entire video on collapsing, so I'd recommend that you check that out if you're not quite sure what that means or what this looks like in practice. So basically what I'm saying here, though, to quickly summarize it, is that you should have multiple paths to win within one counterplan, so that way you don't need to win every single argument you made, but just a few key points, so that way you don't need to spend an extensive amount of time in your rebuttals extending the counterplan and winning every single argument, but rather you can just pick out the key points and still have a path to the ballot. And the last note here is that you want to make sure that the counterplan is fair. What I mean by that is that when we're thinking about things that are more specific counterplans, like the examples I gave before about certain types of PICs or advantage counterplans, there's a part of us that kind of feels like that's a bit cheap to agree with 80% of the AF, but just disagree with 20 and then make the affirmative debater have to refute that. And a lot of times that is what a lot of people would consider an abusive argument. Now, it can be done well. There are PICs that are absolutely fair. but it's about context and the individual basis of what the debate looks like and what the topic looks like. So if you are reading a counterplan that is unfair, not only does that take away from the education of the debate, but it also means that you're more likely to lose because the opponent can just point out how unfair the counterplan is and not even have to refute the warrants of your solvency or anything of that nature. So not only is it good for debate to have a fair counterplan, but it's also just good for you in terms of your debate success. And while it's hard to delineate what exactly is fair, the litmus test that I always use is it generally related to the topic area, as in, is it related to the resolution? Can a direct line be drawn from the wording of the topic given by whatever organization you're using to the counterplan text? If it's super specific about picking languages out or changing very minute details, adding in a delay, or if it's an advantage counterplan that is extremely out of left field, then that's going to be hard to draw a direct line to the topic area and the wording of the resolution. So chances are you should probably workshop that counterplan and turn it into something else.
And that's all I had for the introduction to counterplans. So hope that helped. Thanks for watching.